I think it's very frustrating for many people, both within the Brazilian criminal justice system and for many average citizens that I talk to when I travel around Brazil, about their expectations in their own system. I mean, certainly no system is perfect. I'm not here to say that the system in the U.S. is perfect by any means. It has many flaws that we could talk about. But I do see in many occasions when we are proceeding with parallel prosecutions with the Brazilians that our system moves cases faster to a final conclusion. Our system, I think, any criminal justice system has to have the goal of balancing the rights of the accused against the need for society to achieve a resolution. And I think that people, average citizen, wants to have confidence that the criminal justice system will hold people accountable. And what I see happening in Brazil in too many cases is there is delay and delay and delay. And there is a perception that people are not held accountable. And I think that when the public starts to lose faith in the criminal justice system, it means that as a system we're failing the public. And that means we have to think about, and one thing that I've done while I'm here is to discuss with my colleagues in Brazil, to think about and to learn from each other how we can make changes in our own systems to make sure they're functioning more efficiently.
Por tudo que o senhor vê nessas questões de cooperação internacional entre Estados Unidos e Brasil, quais são os aspectos negativos que incomodam o senhor em relação às investigações e ao sistema penal brasileiro?
The one I just mentioned. There's an interesting aspect of this that I think will resound with you. It seems to me that in Brazil, often the press plays a different role than in the United States, and there's a level of communication between the press and the police and prosecutors in Brazil that is different than how we proceed in the United States. For us, when an investigation is pending, before charges are publicly filed, before there's a conviction, we don't tend to speak about our investigations to the press. Here I see it is much more common for the press to be involved with law enforcement. And in some ways that can be a good thing. I think that many times, as you and I have discussed, there's a level of accountability that the press brings to these investigations. The problem is when you're working cooperatively with a foreign country. When we provide evidence to a Brazilian authority, it is provided pursuant to a court order, and we expect there to be confidentiality. And generally speaking, especially as we've developed our relationship with Brazil, that confidentiality has been respected. Early on in our relationship, pursuant to an order from my judge, we provided some evidence to Brazilian authorities, and a few weeks later, I saw some of that evidence in a Brazilian magazine, and I was outraged. The problem is it jeopardized our future relationship, and we had to come up with concrete procedures to make sure that didn't happen again. So, you know, I think that there has to be that was an example of a very frustrating incident, and I think that it was important that we understand when we're working with foreign countries that we have to sort of respect the way that each other's processes mandate we work and take steps to effectuate that.
Dos casos de maior repercussão no Brasil recentemente, envolvendo corrupção e político, diz respeito ao ex-prefeito Paulo Maluf, de São Paulo. O senhor atuou efetivamente nesse caso e eu gostaria que o senhor falasse alguma coisa sobre o trabalho que o senhor desempenhou e as conclusões tiradas em cima da investigação sobre o caso Paulo Maluf.
Well, of course, it's a pending case in my country. There's an open indictment accusing Paulo Maluf of having stolen money from Brazil and possessing it within Manhattan in certain bank accounts that he used and controlled in Manhattan. So, to some extent, I can't say too much beyond what's in the public record already, in the indictment. I think that for my office that was a very important case because it was a clear case of corruption and larceny and moving money through New York banks to various accounts offshore. And it was exactly the kind of case that shows the use of banks in numerous jurisdictions to launder and hide the proceeds of criminal conduct. It was a great example of cooperation. We had incredible prosecutors and police in Brazil gathering evidence. People in my office, on my staff, gathered all sorts of evidence and records in New York. And then we had people in foreign countries, including Jersey and the Channel Islands, Switzerland, gathering evidence of accounts overseas. Any one of those countries would not have been able to make the case alone. It required a tremendous cooperative effort between Brazil, the US, Jersey, Switzerland, to bring together all of the information so that we could follow the money from a crime in Brazil through bank accounts in New York to bank accounts offshore.
Bom, nesse trabalho todo à frente da área de combate à lavagem de dinheiro, o senhor já lidou com políticos corruptos, com grandes barões do tráfico internacional de drogas, barões da Colômbia, o senhor já lidou com fraudes financeiras de todo tipo. O senhor alguma vez já teve que investigar uma igreja por lavagem de dinheiro?
I'm trying to think if I've had cases with churches. Nothing comes immediately to mind, but I've certainly seen charities, entities set up to take people's charitable donations, and then the money is used for big TVs, cars, personal lifestyle, nothing to do with charity. And that's a very well-known and well-documented type of fraud in the United States, and we've certainly, at the Manhattan DA's office, handled any number of cases of that type.
O senhor acredita que crimes, fraudes cometidos por líderes de uma igreja são mais graves do que fraudes e crimes cometidos por um político, por um administrador público?
I don't know if it's worse. I mean, if you're the victim of a fraud and you lost your life savings, I don't think it matters to you whether you lost it to a church, a corrupt politician, or someone running a Ponzi scheme. It's certainly bad. It's a betrayal of trust in a different way, a betrayal of trust involving religion, God, faith. You know, I mean, we prosecuted a Ponzi scheme where a Dominican man in the Dominican community in northern Manhattan in Washington Heights was going to churches not as a religious man, but as a so-called investment advisor, and he was taking the money of you know, little old ladies, literally their life savings. He was taking the entire endowment of churches, all of their charitable money, and telling them that he would invest it for them and give them a great return. And he was buying a car, a big screen TV, lingerie for his girlfriend. That's certainly as much a betrayal as someone who sets up a fake charity or a church. You know, I mean, Madoff, the biggest Ponzi scheme ever, and the level of betrayal and the depth of betrayal is staggering. So all of these fraud cases involve a breach of trust, and I don't think that I would say one is worse than the other. They're all bad, they're all corrupt, and we have to do what we can to stop them.